Mm-hmm.
La la la.
La la la. On Twitter's 3 retweets with all you guys.
That's fine. People watch the recording.
People, do they watch the? Do they?
They do. Check the stat. You have those stats.
I do have the stats. I have so much mail to go through. What a mess. You ever have that? Like everything is overwhelming.
Everything is
I'm having
overwhelming.
exactly. I'm right there. I'm like over. Oh, Damon, while you were gone, did you see this? This is called a latte panda. It's like a Raspberry
I'm
Pi.
sorry. What is it called?
Latte,
Is it
like a drink.
x86?
It's x64.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
So it is a Raspberry Pi sized
Yeah.
device, 4 gigs of RAM.
What?
Yes.
It's not $40 though.
It's like $79 or whatever.
Twice the price.
What a
Okay.
latte panda, but check it out. So I got
Is that a screen?
it's a $29 touchscreen. The latte panda goes on the back. This is connected to the screen.
What?
Dude, watch.
What type
So
of chip is it? Some Atom thing?
it's some kind of atom chippy thing, but it's effectively a fully formed
Tablet.
Windows tablet. Well, not a tablet. It's
Oh, it's a
a
touchscreen.
it's a goofing around machine, right? You know, it's the kind of thing where it's like I
I'd
know
bolt it to the back of my TV.
well, yeah, you could do that, but you know, it's kind of the I know Windows, I know UWP. I
Mm.
wanna make a touchscreen to control my house.
Does it have? Well, that's something I'm actually looking at the moment. Does it have GPIO?
So that's the part that's so absolutely ridiculous about this.
Shield?
It has Ardu. This is and like I'm like I can't even like explain it to you. I want to pause for effect so many times because it's so amazing. It has Arduino built in as a coprocessor. So there's
What?
So you can use the output or the.
but the best part, the part that's like so freaking genius of these guys, here it's booting up, is they did a loop back to itself. So
Yeah.
COM port 5 on itself is the Arduino.
Nice.
So you're talking to yourself.
Yeah.
You go and run Windows Remote Arduino in Visual Studio that you run on the actual device.
What?
When you turn the device on, the
Yeah.
Arduino is on by default
That's awesome.
with full GPIO.
Yeah.
Then you have to boot up Windows separately, like I'm trying to do right now. And yeah, it's just so amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's very inexpensive. I'll do a blog post about it. And then this is just I 3D printed the case and a couple of stands. It comes basically, by itself with a wooden thing, and you have to kind of put together a case. So it's not
Okay.
exactly. It's a hobbyist device, but yeah, it's somewhere between a Raspberry Pi and a NUC. But I'm finding it personally more useful than Windows IoT Core because it runs full Windows, and I've installed Visual Studio Community on the thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I'm working on getting ASP.NET and all that kind of stuff on it right now.
Okay.
All right, cool. So you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, I was out for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. Were you on vacation or what were you doing?
No, no. Well, I was moving house, so I was taking vacation, but I was moving house for a week.
Moving
Then,
house. That's a very Australian way to phrase it. That's
and
like
then
I
I.
was
Oh,
in
was it?
hospital.
Okay. As opposed to saying what?
Americans, we say we moved.
Oh, we moved. Okay.
Yeah. Like, do you say you
Um,
go to the hospital?
we go to the hospital. Yeah.
So you go to hospital.
Do we?
You do. We go to the hospital, and you guys go to hospital,
I guess so.
right? Oh, he's in hospital.
He's in hospital.
He's studying maths in hospital.
Yeah, studying maths in hospital.
Yeah, we don't do that. We go to the hospital after we move and study
Then it
maths.
was Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
then I got sick. Then I flew to Oslo for NDC Oslo
Yeah.
with David Fowler.
Cool. Your
There
favorite
was there
conference?
for a whole week, and then I was back yesterday. So Oslo NDC was fantastic.
I saw the most amazing animated GIF of you and
Wait till you
David.
see the whole talk.
They're making animated GIFs of you and David now.
So yeah, we had a very animated talk at NEC Oslo about Kestrel.
Okay.
And at some point, the concepts we were trying to explain are so ridiculously complicated for your typical web developer like me. I was struggling to. We were both struggling to try and articulate these concepts that Kestrel uses to become so fast. And so we kind of just broke out into dramatic interpretation in the middle of the stage, and we used that shtick for the rest of the talk to try and explain all these things. And that's what the animated GIFs were capturing, where it looks like David and I were dancing, which is in some cases, kind of true. But yeah, so like I encourage people once to talk. The talks have just started to go live this morning, so I'm hoping that talk will go live fairly soon. Yeah. So anyway, people seem to like it. People said it was the best talk they've ever been to. There was a lot of laughing. There was a lot of insane moments where we kind of looked at each other and
Look behind you.
what? Who
Look
is it?
behind you. Oh, you missed it. Someone was scrubbing something on the wall.
It says hi Scott,
Oh,
and then there's some red.
okay. Well, someone behind you, their arms were moving up and down. They were scrubbing
Okay.
something on the thing. Sorry about that.
Such wit. Yeah. So anyway, that was fun. But before that, we taught a 2-day workshop on ASP.NET Core, introduction to ASP.NET Core, which went really well, I thought. Feedback seemed to be really good as well. We had about 34 people. And then we did a talk. We called it a deep dive to ASP.NET Core, but it was basically just, when you say deep dive, it's an excuse for us to talk about whatever we like. And we did a demo.
Truth in advertising.
Truth in advertising. So there was 2 demos we basically did. One was we built our own .NET Core framework. So in
Like you built it from scratch, you mean? Like
no, so like how
or...
there's that thing netcore.app that's in your RC2 applications?
Yeah.
And it's marked as type platform in your project JSON file.
Okay.
That indicates that you have the .NET Core sort of runtime framework installed on your machine, and that's what you're going to run on. We built our own one of those. We showed how you could take.
So why is that a good idea? Like, it sounds like you're doing pretty advanced stuff. Why is that? Is this just like 300 level stuff? Like, this isn't normal human being stuff, right?
No, it's just because it was a way it allows us to demonstrate the mechanics of how that feature works. Of like, how is it that Microsoft.NET Core.app is in my project JSON? What does it mean? Why does type platform exist? Where do those files exist on disk? Why is it when I publish they're not included in my output? As a way of illustrating all of those aspects, we built our own and said, look, this isn't magic. It's just a folder on disk with a special name that matches the name that you put in your project JSON file, which matches the name of a package that represents those files on disk. And we built one. So we built like NDC Super Framework Spring Update Preview 1. And we put all of ASP.NET in there. We put Dapper in there. We put Serolog in there, JSON.NET, and a bunch of libraries. And then we produced a package that represented that. We installed it into the right location on our hard drive. And then we built an app that used that .NET Core framework instead of .NET Core app. And then when we published the app, the only thing in its output folder was the DLL for the app, because the rest of it was already in the shared framework. So that was an interesting demo to talk about how, I mean, it's not a first-class feature, but you can do this right now. It totally works, and you can build your own little custom company's shared framework, put it on the server, and then you don't have to deploy any of those bits anymore. And the second demo I did, that was David's demo, then I did a demo where I hosted ASP.NET Core in a WinForms app. And when I say I hosted it in a WinForms app, I didn't just cheat and start up Kestrel in a WinForms app. I wrote a custom server that basically every request was a method invocation. And so then you would type URL in to a text box in WinForms, hit go, and it would do a method call into the server, which would then just do a method call into the request pipeline, and then return the response body as a stream. And then I took the response body stream and I applied it as the document stream to the web browser control in WinForms, and my web page showed up. So that was an illustration of what it takes to build a web server that will run ASP.NET Core, and prove the fact that it's just a bunch of libraries. .NET Core, so ASP.NET Core is just some libraries that target .NET Framework and .NET Standard, so you can run them on .NET Core or you can run them on full framework, and I ran them in a WinForms app because they run on full framework, and I wrote a custom server in 10 lines of code, and we had to go through. So that was kind of stupid, but fun.
So from the way you're describing, that's all method invocation. There's no HTTP.
There was literally no socket.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was the ridiculous thing about the demo. It's very easy to host ASP.NET Core in a WinForms app and just have Kestrel start a port, right? But
Sure.
I wanted to go further and have it all be inside that one WinForms process. So when you hit the go button, it just made a method call into the pipeline and came out again. Which is what we have we have a test host, which is a test server, so you can actually host ASP.NET Core in your tests, and then literally run a request through the pipeline without actually doing any sockets. So it was very similar to that. Anyways, that was fun. Whereas the Kestrel one was talking about SIMD and system.numerics and how we do crazy things with strings in Kestrel, where we basically codify known strings as longs, because strings are ultimately just bytes, and so bytes can also be mapped to numbers. So we have a known string like the connect word, which appears as a verb in HTTP payloads. We can just turn that into a long, like it's a number, I don't know, 4 billion, something, 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 something. And then when we're reading the bytes off the wire, you can just cast them directly to a long, and if they match the long that we know is that string, then we don't have to allocate a new string, we can just point to the one that's already interned. It's just crazy stuff like that. It was kind of fun to go through that code. One of the guys, Stefan here, and Caesar, who are at work on Kestrel, wrote a fantastic PowerPoint deck that we just stole and used for this talk. So that was good fun.
Cool.
It sounds a little overwhelming.
What was that?
I don't know. It sounds advanced. Like it sounds like it does sound like kind of walking around the edges, the outskirts of .NET Core, so as better to understand the essence of it.
Yeah, so I mean that's the type of talks that David and I typically do. Like we did a 2-day workshop, which was an introduction, which is all 101 stuff.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of other people doing normal, ASP.NET Core talks. So we did 2 ridiculous talks.
Well, I'm doing a normal 100 level, 200 level talk in Germany next week.
That's good.
But now you're making me feel sad about my.
No, you're doing a workshop though, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a full day workshop.
Totally different. I mean, talks are totally different. I mean, in the talk, you have 45 minutes to 60 minutes to blow people's brains. In a workshop, you have a day or 2 days to actually impart knowledge. So I see them as very different things. I mean, it really depends on. Anyway, people seem to resonate. People seem to like it. We had fun doing it.
Well, you got gifts out of it.
I think people did learn some things. So.
You got animated GIFs out of it, so.
We got animated GIFs out of it. First time many of my talks have been turned into animated GIFs. So.
Did you just say GIF?
I did.
Uh-oh. I'm going to hang
I
up.
have to hang up on him now. Good night, everybody.
I was going to flirt between hard and soft G just to piss you off.
That was the stand-up today. It is. I want to remind you, it is review time, Damian. So if you insist on continuing to say that word,
it's pronounced YIF.
Yes, it's pronounced YIF with a soft Y. I would actually be more supportive of calling it YIF than I would calling it the name of the peanut butter that Damian is uttering. But it's all good. Okay, cool. Well, so let's do some community stuff, and then there's been some complaints that there haven't been enough Q&A. So let's do a couple of 7 or 8 hours of Q&A, shall we?
Oh, and I have there was one issue I wanted to show people. I was typing up some post 1.0 Razor sort of ideas that we had, and I wanted to show some of those. So we'll do that after community.
Okay.
All right.
John Galloway.
I'm sharing. First, I'm shrinking my font size down to, because you like that. Okay, so first of all, we've got .NET Conf, so video's live for that. That's exciting. Tons of good stuff, including like day one, a lot of official talks from the team. Cool stuff, including like Jeff Fritz modernizing applications, etc. And then also day 3 with the community, we had some good talks. Like one cool one was James Chambers showing off the humanitarian tools toolbox, stuff like that. So great stuff there. During that, Jeff Fritz showed off this cool map of community contributions and participation. And so these are the high-res images. You can click through and see them all blown up. But so this is really cool. This is neat to see the participation, and he explains data sources and stuff for that. This is Bobby Johnson. He wrote up a post on building a static file server, and just kind of looking at the static file server package, and some things that surprised him as he was going through, etc. So cool stuff there. This one I'm just personally excited about. Markdown's a big thing, and this is a high-performance, common mark compatible Markdown engine for .NET from Alexander.
Ooh.
And so one thing I really like, and he did look at existing things that are out there. One thing that's really special about his is he's got support for extensions. So the commonmark.net parser is very fast, but doesn't have extension support. I've been through this a lot on things that I work on that are written in Markdown and need to be compiled to HTML, etc. So I'm very excited about this.
That is useful.
Yep. Okay, Jerry Pelser, a great blog post from him on authenticating a user with LinkedIn on ASP.NET Core.
And a very prescient.
Exactly.
Go back to that, considering we just bought them. Do you hear about that, Damian?
What's that?
We
LinkedIn?
bought LinkedIn yesterday.
Yeah, like just casually. The biggest acquisition in Microsoft.
We found some change in our couch, and
Did we
$26
tell the IRS about it?
billion worth of change.
So there you go. Okay, this is Bill, and Bill's writing about hybrid model binding in ASP.NET Core. So that's when you want to bind to both the body and the request. This is, you got to be careful with this. You can get yourself in trouble with that. So my understanding is that the model binding in MVC now is kind of fail safe so that it only will bind to one or the other. But this is if you do need to, for some reason, bind to both. So there you go. This is Maher. He's looking at the built-in logging framework in ASP.NET Core. So he kind of digs into that. Rick Strahl, nice long blog post on just what he sees as the progression of ASP.NET Core, what he's excited about in there, and all kinds of stuff. So great perspective.
His posts are very. He's been very vocal, and he's very fair. You know what I mean? I think it's not going to. I haven't read this piece, but I know that it won't be a puff piece. It'll be the good and the bad and how he sees it. And he's been around for a long time, so that's definitely good stuff.
Absolutely, and he writes a lot of code. He uses this stuff, so he won't just say this kind of bugs me. He'll say I use this. I had trouble with it at first, but it improved in this beta. That kind of stuff. It's really well thought. Two posts from guys named Michal. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I'm sorry about that. But one is ASP.NET Core problems and fixes. So this is just a look at some things that, problem solution kind of stuff. So always nice and helpful. Another one from Michal. This is on microservices on ASP.NET Core running on Ubuntu. And so going through Ubuntu. There you go.
I was wondering how many weeks it was going to take you to correct him, actually.
Well, somewhere around GIF was where we lost control of this talk.
Okay.
So easy to wind us all up.
Kevin, writing about HTTPS redirect. So when you want to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. And as he went through that, he learned some things about how middleware is set up, how ports work, how Kestrel works, and all that. So cool findings there. This is Damian Bowden, and he's written tons of great blog posts. Here he is. This is Angular 2 setup with Webpack, with ASP.NET Core in Visual Studio. So kind of mixing all the pieces together, very helpful. Philip, he's had this project for a while. This is typed routing. So if you want to strongly type your routing, he's had this available for Web API for a while, and he got this working with Core, so nice to see that. We've got a couple of posts from Laurent Kemp, and these are on ASP.NET Core RC2. So first he got it working with Docker and HipChat Connect add-on, and then the follow-on post he wrote about deploying it to Azure. This is Vincent, and he wrote about setting up a command to publish to Docker with the .NET CLI. A nice, cool thing about this too is there's a little note here that he's updated it. I love seeing posts that people post and then update as to newer versions. Two final ones here, two starter kits. So we've got, this is Konstantin, and he's got an ASP.NET starter kit pulling together, in this case, React.js, Babel, and Webpack, and all the
Make that
ASP.NET.
Make that one a little bit bigger there for me. Here we go.
There we go. All right, so this is a nice core starter kit. So this one with React and Babel and all that. And this one is from Mohammed Rahan Saeed, and he's got this ASP.NET MVC boilerplate. So I've mentioned it in the past. What's cool is this extension lets you check off what you want. I think that's really key. That it's great to mix all the stuff together and get them all working together. But I love this checkbox approach where you can say, here's how to take a little of this and a little of this and mix them all together. And that is the end of those. I do want to show off one other community thing. This is our friends in Russia sent this home with me.
Oh, I am envious
not-
of that. I saw that. Open that up, man. That is ridiculous.
This thing is ridiculous. Now, what's nice about this is Damian has a gavel, but now
Look at that.
I can.
Look at that thing.
Yeah. So
It's a
and
toolbox.
it is a toolbox, and there's a little thing in here.
How did you
This,
get that through security?
I was about to ask the same question.
Yeah, this actually says from Russia with love.
Look at that.
So,
Oh man, I wanted to go there and I did not go.
so that's you did need to go. They tried to send 2 back with me, but I seriously there was no way to take it through. So I actually checked a bag, and I had to get another bag and put it through. But it was fine, checking it. But I was like freaking out for a bit. They were trying to send 2 home with me, so everyone that went to their workshop got
Man,
one of those toolkits.
that's really cool.
It was very cool. Yep.
Wow. And can I just say for a second that it is the return of blogging is happening right now, and we are seeing it. Like, I was complaining, if you remember correctly, both of you, a while back about how I felt that there wasn't enough blogging going on in the .NET space, and everyone was going on Twitter. And I just think that if you look over the last year in the blogs that you have brought to us, John Galloway, and I would encourage everyone, of course, also to subscribe to Chris Alcock's, The Morning Brew. Alvin Ashcraft also has a daily kind of list of .NET blogs. We are seeing an uptick in blogging. We're seeing deeper blogging. We're seeing thoughtful blogging. I repeated it during the .NET Conf keynote, but your blog is the engine of community. Whether it's on Medium, God forbid, or whether it's on your own blog, please keep blogging. It is so much more valuable, and the team sees your subtweets, but we really appreciate your blogs, and that's where the real work gets done. So, man, kudos to everybody for continuing to blog, and kudos to you, John, for collecting them all.
Yeah, I have to say the hardest challenge is there's so much good stuff, which is a great challenge to have.
And would you agree there are more than there were? There's an uptick. It's happening.
Yeah. I think there's there's stuff to get excited about. People are finding new things that haven't been written up, and are able to dig in deep into them. There's a lot to be covered now. So
absolutely.
It's cool.
It's a renaissance. All right. Damian.
Yes.
Let us go
Let
through
me show you some things.
some questions. Oh, are you going to show us things? We'll do Q&A at the end?
Yeah.
All right. Show your things, sir.
Yeah. That screen. First of all, I wanted to tell everyone that I learnt what it takes to drill holes through sort of half-inch solid marble tiles.
Without cracking it, I assume.
Without cracking it. And
You're
my
putting your
TV.
in your potty?
What's that?
This in your bathroom?
No.
Why do you have marble tile in your house?
That's over around. Well, I can show you the next photo if you want to see.
I would love to see.
That's the TV mount that I added over the fireplace in the family room because it was pretty wide. But this is a brand new house we just moved into.
Were you afraid that you were going to?
Oh, you have no idea how scared I was. So originally, I was going to pay a handy person to do all this for me, and then I got sick, and then I came back from Oslo, and then I thought, screw it. I've been handy before. And I put the cat door I had a cat door I had to put into the garage, between the house and the garage. So I did that, and that was like a 1.5-inch thick entrance door. So that was fun. I got my jigsaw out and did that. Yeah. That went very well. So then I decided I'd tackle the marble. And just so you know, the marble tiles, then there's a half an inch of adhesive, which then is onto plasterboard, or what do you call it here, drywall. And then there's a beam, that's a horizontal beam that goes the full width across there, specifically for mounting TVs on. So I don't have to worry about studs. So I had to drill using a diamond bit through the marble, and then a pilot hole through the drywall and the timber before I finally put in many, many screws, because I just didn't trust that my 60-kilogram TV would last on there. But if I look for the next photo after that, you'll see that
How do you drill though? How do you not crack it?
So so you get these little kits, right? So at Home Depot, It's just funny. Like this is the home improvement show. At the Home Depot, I got one of these things. It's like a what do you call it? Like a
It's a bit set.
Marble tile drill something something, and it's this little plastic box. See if I can find it. It's a little plastic box with a pilot hole that you then stick onto the wall, and then you fill it with water, and it comes with the drill bit that goes through it as well. Diamond drill bit.
I see. So you're putting water in there to keep it cool.
Oh yeah, like this little box contains the water, and then it looks like this one here actually. But I was hoping I could.
Well, we don't want to waste everyone's time.
Yeah. No, anyway, so that's how you do it. And then what I wanted to show was the TV, but I can't find the photo, so never mind.
So this is what you were doing.
It's above the fireplace, and it's all staying up there so far. So that was good. What I wanted to show you was this thing. So David and I had a 5-6 hour layover in Heathrow on the way back, and as we were sitting there eating our breakfast, we started talking about some things we wanted to do in Razor, and someone had asked recently on the GitHub repo about, or on Twitter I think, about templating. Now the word templating is overloaded, so let me say, Razor itself is a templating language, it is a templating engine, but it doesn't really have many features that allow you to use, define and reuse templates as part of the sort of view composition. So you write, like the whole thing is a template, right? You have C# and you have HTML, and it generates C# and then spits stuff out. But there's no way really to define a template, give it a name, and then invoke it by its name and pass in the arguments that you want to generate, you want to be used to generate the code at runtime, which is what you need when you're going to build complicated components that you need to be able to like pass a set of data and a template to, and then have the component use the data to render the template over and over and over again, just like you would in Angular or anything like that. So there is a thing called templated Razor delegates that already exists. It's still supported, but it's very, very little, very unknown, really. So this is like the only blog post about it that Phil wrote 5 years ago. Templated Razor delegates, and shows you how it works. Basically, it's func of t to object, which is what gets written out. This is what it takes in. This is what gets written out. And then you see this syntax? You can literally assign HTML to a func. And Razor, whenever it sees this at some HTML as a C# expression, it treats that as, oh, this is a template expression. So let me turn that into a func of blah, 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 right? Func of t to t. And then you can use that in sort of this case. So he created a list helper that took in a bunch of items, the data.
In 2011.
Yes, 5 years ago. And here's the template. It's a func that you can invoke. And he says for each item in the items, invoke the template, passing in the current item, and then write it out. So that still exists in Razor, but it's a little neutered in the new Razor. And it doesn't support async, and it's it's not particularly nice. So this is about creating a first-class set of features around templating in Razor. And to sort of drill down to it, what it basically, oh god, look, I've even got my markdown totally wrong, so I can't even read this properly. Let me just fix this, because I can't explain it if it's not bold. Let me do this, and come over here, and change that, and then I'll say this.
I knew that was familiar. We actually wrote up in more detail in the Rocks MVC book, templated Razor delegate. Yep.
So this would be introducing a new directive, an @template directive, which would then let you. It's a little bit like @helper. Like we used to have this thing called @helper, which would produce you a method that you could invoke. But the difference with this one is that it produces you a template delegate that you can then pass around and reference by name. So you could define this, for example, in your view imports file, which would then make this template available throughout your application, which then you could do, then you could pass into something like a for each helper, which I wrote up here. So here's my for each helper, right?
Slow down. It's,
I know, right? Going back up. Here's my for each helper. It takes some data, takes a template, which is a func of t data, enumerable of t, that returns HTML content, which is the thing that Razor knows how to render.
Could you take 30 seconds and just explain func of t to people who maybe are at the edge of their ability?
A func of t is a delegate. A delegate is just a function, right? It is a method. It is a method expressed as a variable or a parameter as opposed to a declaration, right? Something you can invoke. So it means that you can pass it around. We got this in C# too.
Okay, so the
if you don't know what
template.
they are by now, stop being scared of them and go and learn it. Right?
Okay.
They're really not that difficult. So this is saying this is a func that takes one argument and returns
Of some type T.
HTML content. Funcs return stuff. Actions don't. So actions are void. Funcs return T. In this case, the T is HTML content, and it accepts one parameter, which is an open generic. It hasn't been closed over here. We don't know what the T is. The T will be determined based on when you invoke it. All right? So it's a promise to have a function that can take something in the future due to the magic of generics. That template function can be invoked down here. See, it's just a method. I can just invoke it, and I can pass in my item, which I got from my data, var item in data, which is an IEnumerable of T. So that T matches up with that T, so I can pass it into the template. So down here, now I can define these templates with the @template directive. Sorry, scroll too far. There it is, like so. This could be any Razor that you want. This is basically a snippet of Razor code, and it can be as complicated or as simple as you like. It's just Razor. It then gets wrapped in a method. It's now available as a named delegate with whatever arguments you want. Basically generates this code behind the scenes, all right? As if you'd done that in C#, but you get to do it in Razor, okay? Which is kind of nice because writing HTML in C# is kind of like painting over the telephone. So then I can invoke it directly, just like a helper.
Writing HTML in C# is like painting over the telephone.
Yeah. You've never heard that before?
Happy little.
No. You probably picked that up in hospital.
No, yeah, in the hospital. So in this case, I can now pass that Hello World template directly into this for each helper because this for each helper requires a template, right? It has to know what to render. So that's the sort of the simplest case. Then we need to support async in the same thing because we don't support async for this now. It's pretty straightforward. Template async, blah blah blah. We'd like to support multiple arguments, so it's just like a method, right? So why can't I take multiple arguments? This is how that would look. That's what it would generate. Then I'd be able to invoke it like this, or I'd be able to pass it to a slightly more complicated helper that takes a func of T1 to T2. So this requires 2 arguments of undetermined types right now, and then I would invoke it that way. And then lastly, this is the bit I'm still writing up, we would extend tag helpers to support templating as well. So here we can see the base type for my tag helper has changed to one that is generic, where the T, in this case, is the type of data that the template requires to be rendered. Okay? So I am a templated tag helper. I'm going to require a template that can have passed into it an IEnumerable of T item. Right? So I'm also using an open generic, closed generic, open generic. I can assign the items as a property on my tag helper, just like I could today. And then I would call getChildContentAsync passing in the T. Okay, passing in the items. In this case, my T is IEnumerable of T item, which is up here, IEnumerable T item, so I can pass it directly in here by way of items. And now I can have templated tag helpers. What that would mean is that in the consumption, when I use this tag helper, the body of this tag would become the template. All right, and if I show, I think I've got a gist that shows this, but I haven't finished writing this up yet. David captured everything that we were talking about at the airport. So here it is. So as an example of what this might look like as a tag helper, and I'll zoom in once I find it. So, where is it? Scroll, no. There, okay. If I zoom in on this, here's an example of what a repeat tag helper might do. So ASP-repeat, you give it some data, and then now I have a new variable that's available just inside this scope, because this is my template. Everything inside this element now gets treated as a template, because that's what the generic tag helper would do, and then it would expose an item member that relates to the T that was declared as my tag helper. So down here, in this case, T context would be item, and the calling page would be the one that closes over that generic and defines what T context is at runtime, just like generics always do. So that's something that we were super interested in. It would allow some very nice composability scenarios and reuse scenarios for razor fragments that are kind of difficult to do today. That we're looking at. Now, the last thing here is that we'd want to have a tool that would let you take these templates that you've defined in razor files and then package them up as classes in a NuGet package so that you could share templates across multiple projects and you could distribute them as NuGet packages, which would be kind of cool as well. So anyway, just a little view into some things that we're thinking about. There's a whole bunch of other ideas for razor that we have, but this was the particular one that I was writing up this week.
And
so when you guys, sorry, go ahead.
Well, since that's all generic and split out like that, you could swap out different templates at runtime, like for a different display.
So yes,
you could select your template.
What this allows is composability of razor fragments, so that you can have a helper method, like an HTML helper, or a tag helper that says, I need a template. I don't know what the template is. All I know is the template takes this argument and has to return HTML. So you give me a template in your page, which is your fragment of razor, which you can define in line, by the way, and then the tag helper or the HTML helper can use that template to do rendering. Okay. So right now you can't really build a templated tag helper like a repeat tag helper. All you can do is kind of render the child multiple times, but you can't give the child data in order to affect its rendering while it's going. Not easily, anyway, not in a first-class way. This would make that possible, okay, and then would lay the foundation for us to build even more advanced features later on. So, yeah.
When you all talk about stuff like that, when does it, like, how does this relate to RTM? Is this like future ideas or these libraries that might show up? If they did show up, is that ASP.NET Core 1.01 or is it just a...
This is future. This is post 1.0. I think I said that.
So it's a post 1.0 feature.
Yeah, I mean, like, RTM's done. We ship it in 2 weeks yesterday, so there's absolutely nothing going into RTM now other than critical fixes. This is starting the next phase of planning about things that we want to do after RTM. We're starting to see people use tag helpers. We're starting to see control vendors release tag helpers and new HTML helpers for ASP.NET Core. So we're starting to see, and we're teaching workshops, we're starting to see boilerplate that people have to write as they start using the features, which means I need to look at that and go, okay, well, this code is really common. How can we build a first-class feature that removes the need for that code, or create new primitives in something like Razor that allows new type of expressions and composability that you can't achieve right now because we're just missing fundamental features. So code generation is another one that we're going to look at, but that will probably come a little bit later. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. So I think there's a bunch of questions showing up in the Gitter.
Yep. So again, as we said on Twitter. As we said on Twitter, to remind folks who maybe just joined, you can ask questions over in Gitter at Gitter, Gitter.im, and we're in /ASP.NET/home. So head over there. Lots of questions. I'm going to scroll back an hour and start where we've got some questions.
I think Luke Latham had the first
one. Do you want to go ahead and start that, John?
I think the first one was Meher. Is it possible to deploy ASP.NET 4x on Docker? Is it possible through Mono?
Where are you at?
I'm actually a few more. Look at the dinosaur.
I'm all the way at 9:43 a.m.
Oh, wow. Hang on, we weren't even live at 9:45.
I know, I tweeted it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Sorry.
No.
All right, go ahead, John.
Okay, as a nightly build dev, I'm on the ASP.NET VNext feed. Due to stabilization RC2 final, I had good experience switching over to ASP.NET CI release. Can I and should I go on the CI release feed again while you're stabilizing packages for RTM? If so, should I do that? Or how will I know when to switch to CI?
Or how will I know?
Exactly.
Good question. Yes, you should when we cut that branch. I don't know. That's the engineering team. You'll have to ask them when they're doing that. I imagine they've already done it if they haven't done it already. So look at the release branches. If the release branches are up to date, so I'm just going to go and look at ASP.NET MVC on GitHub. I'm going to drop down the branches. If the release branch is more modern than RC2, then it's been worked on the last couple of days. Then I'll know that's what we're producing builds from. And then go and look at the feed, at the MyGet feed, and have a look at the version numbers of the packages in there, and make an assessment as to based on that. We don't typically do an announcement when we do that type of stuff. I mean, we could, but we don't typically do that. So what does it say there? So yeah, so like release is 156 commits behind dev, but the latest commit was May 11. So it doesn't look like they've branched for release yet. This release branch is still stuck at RC2. So too early. They haven't done it yet.
Okay. Do you want me to
Yeah,
take
please
them,
go
Scott?
ahead. Sure.
Okay, so Mike says, what's the story of the new project templates? Are we looking at going forward with Yeoman, or will there be a first-class template using .NET New?
Sorry?
They're asking about first-class templating around .NET New. Right now, .NET New is extremely basic.
Yeah, so that's coming. There'll be some very small changes to .NET New for RTM, and then there is much larger plans afoot to turn .NET New into a much more fully featured templating system, as in scaffolding type system for building new apps. And there's some work going on about that right now in something called .NET New 3, which Syed, the program manager here, is driving. I'm not sure where that code is, to tell you the truth.
So does that replace Yeoman then?
I mean, replace is a strong word.
I was under the impression, Hunter was saying that it is the intent that we not require Yeoman to be able to make .NET stuff. It's silly to need Yeoman for .NET New.
Right. And so .NET New would enable the ability to get new templates from packages, for example, or maybe from Git repositories. There would be a way to author templates. There would be a menu, so when you invoke it from the command line, you could choose what template you want. It would potentially support variables and supplantation, so the template could ask you questions, and then you could say, yes, I want this is the name of my project, this is the da-da-da, and it would use that when it generates the project. And we want it to be super duper fast as well. So they're doing a lot of work in ensuring that the templating engine that they're writing is a single pass only engine, unlike what we have in VS today, which is a lot slower. And then eventually we would use this as the foundation, hopefully, in an ideal world, for all the templates in Visual Studio to do with .NET Core projects as well, so that you get the same set of templates across Visual Studio, across the command line on Windows, Mac, VS Code, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Meher's asking if it's possible to deploy ASP.NET 4.x on Docker, maybe with Mono.
No idea. Maybe.
Yeah.
I've never tried it.
Docker, I don't think anyone's tried it. Why not just use .NET Core?
Well, because they may need .NET Framework.
Oh, the full framework. I see. So Mono as full framework on Docker on Linux.
Right. So I imagine that would be possible, and on Windows Server 2016, it might even be possible to run it a .NET Framework app in a container on Windows Server 2016.
As long as you're not using any IIS-specific stuff.
IIS runs in a container as well.
Right, but you just said I assume that they're running it in Mono, which means that they're...
No. So that's Mono would only be required if you're in Linux. So if you're on Windows, you could just run .NET Framework.
Yeah, in a Windows container.
Right, and if you're on...
I was under the impression they were doing it on Linux.
Well, they didn't say that. They just said Docker, and they said maybe Mono because, I don't know. So anyway, I just wanted to give a full answer. So if you're on Windows, you can potentially do it on natively. Otherwise, if you're on Linux, obviously you'll have to use Mono.
Cool. Okay. What's the new estimation of being able to reference .NET Core projects from classic .NET Framework projects?
Sorry, what does it mean by new estimation? As to when?
I don't know. When, probably, yeah.
That'll happen as part of the MS build work.
Okay. Eric, if I understand correctly, the goal is to build really small packages. I heard this would probably be done through the linker. Is that true? If so, is there any information on this approach?
No, that's all crystal ball stuff.
Cool.
Can you be more specific to that's all crystal ball stuff?
We've made no announcements whatsoever regarding anything that they're talking about. So, there was some discussions about a linker as it pertains to Xamarin. There's been no announcements regarding anything concrete about linkers for anything other than that. Other than, yeah, it's really interesting. We'd like to look at it sometime in the future. That's my understanding anyway. So I don't have any information on that.
Cool. Okay, question. Are MVC Core 1.0 RC2 views debuggable? Can you set a breakpoint in a view?
Oh, there was a thing about this. I think it broke. So you used to be able to do that. It may be a broken RC2 when we fixed it for RTM. I'm not sure, actually. if any of the team is watching right now, can they ping me on Skype and let me know?
Cool. Okay. Question: basically, are we supposed to upgrade from RC1 to RC2? And there's some discussion going on after that. People are saying you probably just want to go to RTM unless you need it immediately, right? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, RC1 is no longer supported because RC2 is out. If that's important to you, it's not important to everyone. RC2 looks a lot more like RTM will look. So if you upgrade to RC2 now, upgrading to RTM will be very trivial. Or you can just wait for RTM and do the big jump there.
All right. Let me see. Scrolling. There's some questions about whether we should call it jitter instead of getter. I'm going to pass over that. What's the best way to share views between projects? They'd like to use a shared header, footer, layout for multiple projects. They'd like to use view components.
Yes.
Maybe. So is that the best way? View component?
Yes.
What do you do?
We don't have a great way of doing that right now. So we added a feature called application parts in RC2, which enables you to bring in parts of an MVC application like tag helpers and view components and controllers from other libraries, but we haven't done views yet. So there isn't a first-class way of sharing views across MVC projects today. It's something we want to look at in the future.
Okay. Have you fixed document encoding with Visual Studio 15 templates for views? With RC2, they save the wrong encoding, so non-English characters show up wrong until you resave the document, explicitly forcing UTF-8.
No idea. That's a tooling question. Yeah, you'd have to ask one of the tooling guys. Maybe the tooling repo asked that question. I'm not really sure about that issue.
Okay. Are you planning to create some sort of roadmap tutorials about new features, possibilities in ASP development? I would say docs.asp.net, right? I mean, that's,
yeah, I'm not really sure if that question's asking specifically about tutorials or asking about potential new features.
Where are we looking? What time is that one?
That was at 10:47.
10:47. Roadmap tutorials. Actually, I believe that Brady Gaster is looking at tutorials with David Carmona. So what they're asking for, I think, is a roadmap of tutorials, and we could probably write that up. Actually, I think there's a list of them internally, so I can look into that.
Okay. Is it possible to target ASP.NET Core RC1 inside an RC2 project?
No. ASP.NET Core RC1 relies on DNX.
Cool. Let me see a question about your WinForms app thing that you did. He'd love to see mechanics. So he's asking if it's recorded and stuff. And
yeah, so you can see the code. The code's on my GitHub /Damian Edwards /NDC Oslo 2016. I think it is. And the talk will be up in the next day. I mean, they just started uploading the talks today. So there's a lot of talks there to upload. So.
Cool. Okay, Ben's asking if you're going to do release version branches for historic rollbacks, debugging, or GitHub release items. So like a v1.0.0, a v1.1.
We will do at least one of those things, if not more of them, yes. Probably not a branch. Very likely it'll just be tags, which is a GitHub release. So you'll be able to... We do that already. We've done that for all the betas. We've done it for RC1 and RC2, or we're supposed to. And so you should always be able to get it out. The issue is you can't always build. In fact, you can't build, so you can't check out Beta 8 and build Beta 8. Because the way our build infrastructure is set up is Beta 8, in order to successfully build Beta 8, you need to have packages for all of its dependencies at that point in time. Those packages only ever existed on MyGet, and then they were deleted because our MyGet feeds get purged every couple of weeks. So we actually don't have a great way of building from old source the code as it was at that point. You can certainly check it out and look at it. But for servicing, which is a very different question, which is for whatever the currently supported versions of ASP.NET Core are, say we're at 102, and we're working on 1.1, but then we find an issue.
Did you lose them?
We can build a modification to 102. We can build 103 and ship that even though we're already working on 1.1. And that work is all taking place now to set it all up to do that. So.
All right. A question on managed adapter support for Oracle, DB2, etc. on Core CLR.
I have
If
nothing
there's
about
work in
Oracle. What's that?
just yeah, if there's work in progress, collaboration.
I don't. Unfortunately, those specific two, I don't have any word on. I know that Postgres and MySQL and SQLite we already have, and a couple others, but I haven't heard anything concrete about DB2 or Oracle.
Okay. Vladislav asking how to initialize a brand new request and send it to the pipeline for something like a service or program CS main.
Yeah, so to do that, look at the code in my WinForms sample, Damian Edwards slash, let me just verify that is the URL, Damian Edwards slash NDC Oslo, NDC Oslo
NDC
2016.
Oslo, yeah, there it is.
2016. Yep. You have to build a server, and you have requests are represented as feature collections, which is a very simple interface. Implementing a request feature and a response feature is pretty straightforward. You can see how I did it in there. And then that's what you pass to the server delegate in order to say, please run this request. And then it uses the objects that you passed in, your request and your response, to do so. That's it. The code is in there. You can have a look at how to do it.
All right. Docker question. Will there be or is there a .NET restore option with no cache on packages so that the Docker image size could be smaller?
Well,
There's work going on by Glenn to make the Docker image as small as possible.
yeah, but there is. But I'm struggling to understand specifically how they think no cache on a restore is going to make the image size smaller.
Yeah.
Because the no cache flag on restore doesn't prevent the packages from going into your package restore location. It prevents it using the HTTP cache that NuGet has, which is totally separate. Basically, it forces it to go to the network, right? That's what --no cache does. It doesn't save you any hard drive space.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what they're asking, but we certainly are doing work, as Scott said, to try and make our Docker containers as small as possible, which includes looking at enhancing our tool chain, because our tools are still in preview, to allow you to do more things on a published application that will reduce the size of it. We have some technology, like everyone knows what nginning is. We have a new version of that called CrossGen, which is what works cross-platform. And then there is a version of that called Ready to Run, which is sort of the most modern version of ngin that we have. And you can run that over your actual application, which means that you effectively get native images for your application, which means that the CLI doesn't have to JIT. So your startup time becomes much smaller because there's no jitting involved in the application. There is no first-class tool chain for doing that today, but we're investigating what it would take to do that so that you could say, hey, I'm publishing my application. I want it to start up as quickly as possible. I don't mind if the publishing step takes a little longer. Please do this extra stuff to make startup really, really quick. So we're looking at those type of things while also looking at what we can do to make our actual Docker containers just smaller. Most of the time, that issue is due to dependencies. Like what .NET Core needs to run on Linux includes a bunch of dependencies that themselves are quite large. The really big thing that's going to save us here is getting .NET Core to run on Alpine, which is that tiny, tiny, tiny Linux version, and making and allowing you as the app developer to trim out dependencies if you don't need them, so that you can make your Docker container for your app as small as possible. So, I mean, none of this is 1.0, right? I mean, we're going to ship 1.0 in 2 weeks. 1.0 is 1.0. There's going to be many, many, many improvements after that, but we are starting to look at some of those now.
Cool. Yeah, some discussion and follow-up on that. I think he's looking at, he doesn't want to have a local cache. So he wants to only just pull down, restore, run his app, and he doesn't want to build up his Docker, you know what I mean, the result to be cached.
I'm really not following, because if you pull them down, where are you putting them if not your local restore location such that you can run against them? Like, when you do a NuGet restore, the files have to go somewhere. So
okay.
The no-cache just circumvents the HTTP cache, which is a separate thing. It's not actually the package files.
Okay. Let me see what else. We're kind of getting to the end. What's the story of Roslyn analyzers and first-class support for .NET CLI? Currently only 1 or 2 work, and the alternatives are static analysis tools.
Say that again?
What is the story of Roslyn analyzers and first-class support for .NET CLI?
It'll come later.
And Roslyn analyzers are installed as a physics now, right? So the question
No,
is,
no. Analyzers are delivered via packages, but the tooling experience, yeah.
okay, so the tooling experience is a physics, the analyzers are in
Right.
NuGets.
But we don't have first-class support for Roslyn analyzers in the .NET CLI or the .NET Core project system. That will come, again, tooling is in preview. That will come further down the track as tooling gets closer to RTM, and again, most likely as a result of the MS Build work.
Cool. All right, just a couple left here.
Oh.
How do I make a .NET Core console app build as an exe?
You don't.
Yep. All
And you
right.
want that because remember, .NET Core is a hosted model. You have to run .NET.exe on Windows or .NET the executable on Mac and Linux. It's the native code that boots the CLI and thus boots your application. We do have an application model called standalone or self-contained, depending on who you ask, which allows you to take that executable and put it in your published output. And it will even rename I think it'll even rename it from .NET to whatever your application name is. So it looks like you built an exe, but you didn't actually. Like we just copied the bootstrapper into your output folder, and then you run that, and then it still loads your app from a separate DLL. So you can do that, and it's a little cumbersome, and we're looking to make that experience better, so that you can just take a standard .NET Core app, and then when you publish it, just say, hey, publish this as a self-contained app, so that I don't need a .NET Core installed on the target machine in order to run it, and in that case, you will get an executable in your output folder.
Okay. Let me see. Is Mono still supported with RC2?
You can get it to work. It's not supported. It was never supported, as in like you can't call us for support, and we don't test on it anymore. But you can get it to work. You need my understanding is you need to have a modern version of Mono, like it has to be 4.3 or something, whatever that is. And David knows all this stuff. I know he got it to work. And you can compile, you can target net 4.6 or whatever on Mac. You can build for that. You get an exe out, and then you can mono that executable, and it will run, assuming you have everything set up correctly.
Cool. How do we turn on error checking and server-side code in Razor views in RC2?
Compiled views?
You can't. So we don't have precompiled. Views at the moment. That got cut back in Beta 8. That's something that we'll look at bringing back post V1 of the runtime.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. I mean, there's some that...
Well, there's one here about will I be able to reference .NET Core packages in .NET Full apps?
Yeah.
The answer is somewhat nuanced. Depends on what you mean by .NET Core. So .NET Core, the application platform, the thing that we're about to ship as 1.0, no, because that profile, that flavor of .NET is side by side with the .NET framework. That one does not build on top of the other. They both sit on top of .NET Standard. So if your library is built or your package is built to .NET Standard, it will be able to be referenced by both .NET Core and .NET Framework. Or you can have a package that contains a version of the assembly both for .NET Core and .NET Framework if you need to for some specific reason, and then that single package could be loaded into both. There are different ways, and there's a whole guide now up on the .NET Core docs site on how to do package authoring for either of those two cases, depending on what it is that you need to do in your library. So the answer is kind of yes and no, depending on the sort of the specifics of the case.
All right. Yeah.
Uncanny Soft has a question: is there a way to exclude files or folders from being published? Yes. Yeah. Just as you can include files in the publish options, you can also exclude them. So you can do an include glob and then you can do an exclude glob after that under the publish options in your project JSON. That should work just fine.
This last question seems like there's ongoing kind of confusion about the idea of what is quote-unquote standalone apps.
Yes, there is, because we haven't talked about them a lot.
Can we speak about it briefly? Demo?
Sure. So there is a doc about this now. There are two application models for .NET Core console apps. So remember, .NET Core unfortunately is an overloaded term, but .NET Core, the thing that we're about to ship 1.0, is a console application platform, right? It's a .NET vertical that is cross-platform. It's built on CoreFX. It's built on the Core CLR. It includes .NET XE, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That platform supports two application models. It supports what are called portable apps, which is the default, and then there is something called self-contained or standalone apps. The difference is a portable app, when you publish it, it doesn't include in its publish output those parts that are included in the .NET Core framework, okay, in .NET Core itself. So when you take the publish output and you want to run it, you can only run it on a machine that has .NET Core for that machine installed. So this is, the classic demo that we tend to do on stage. I'll publish a .NET Core app from my Windows machine onto a USB key. I'll plug it into David's Mac, and then he will .NET space that DLL at the command line, and the app will run because he's using the Mac version of .NET to run a portable .NET Core app that I published from my Windows machine. So the publish output is portable. That's why they're called portable apps. Okay. Standalone apps or self-contained apps are ones where when you publish them, you have to tell us what platform are you publishing for. Because at that point, you're effectively doing native development, right? You have to put the host in the publish output. On Windows with the .NET Framework, this was all just sort of done for free because .NET was in Windows, and we did that trick where we produced to an exe that didn't actually include .NET. Windows knew how to boot a .NET exe. It was just part of the OS. With the new model, it's cross-platform. If you want to build a self-contained app that has inside of it .NET Core, you have to change the way the app is built. You have to include information in your project JSON about what target platforms you're going to run on. We call them runtimes. So there's a section in the project JSON called runtimes. You have to include some new monikers. They're called runtime IDs or RIDs. Sounds like a terrible disease. In your project JSON that will tell us where you're going to be running the application. That allows us to restore packages that contain implementations potentially for a different platform than the one you're developing on. And then when you publish the application, you have to tell us what platform you're publishing for. So you can say, publish this application for Mac or for Linux, and then the publish output will include everything, all the way down to the .NET executable and the core CLR and everything else in the publish output required for that platform. Okay, so it's somewhat more cumbersome doing a standalone .NET Core application, which is why I mentioned that we're doing work to make it much more natural. In DNX, the way this worked is portable was the default, and if you wanted to make it standalone, when you published, you passed -- runtime as an argument to DNU publish, and then you told us what DNX runtime you wanted to include in the application, and we basically copied it into the output. So we will do a very similar thing for the .NET Core CLI. So you can say .NET publish -- self - contain, and then it will drop in the target platform's .NET Core into the output so you can run it there.
Let me see. Okay, Alan, any word on these blog posts going into more detail on the project system changes?
Yeah, as the project system stuff gets written and worked on, there will be detailed blog posts.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will be doing a lot more. We'll be doing blog posts for explanations and future stuff, but we're going to be trying to push most stuff into docs because if it is documentation, it belongs in docs. We don't want to accidentally or otherwise use blogs as a replacement for docs.
Right. I think the blogs we want to use for making status updates as
Right.
to either design decisions or direction changes or just weekly status of what we're doing. But things that are done and shipped, how to use those should always be explained in docs. Things that are a little more esoteric, like if we're doing crazy demos for things that are unsupported, but look what's possible because this stuff is crazy, that would probably still be a blog post. But otherwise, we want stuff to be in docs.
Cool.
All right.
Status of betas and also status of betas.
Beta, tomato.
Status, data.
Awesome.
The revolt of the colonies. I think we're done, eh?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's enough for a week.
All right, cool, everybody. I thought the chat thing worked better this time.
Yeah. A little more
It's going by
free-flowing, isn't
really
it?
fast, though. There's a lot of people in there, and they're talking very quickly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well.
Good. So next week, though,
Yes.
I will be in Germany.
Oh, no!
So you can do it. What I did last week, and we need to come up with a better solution than Google Hangouts, and we're still looking into ways, by the way. Skype for meetings might be a way. Actually, we should try that one next time. I will be there. So you can either maybe do it with your account, and then what I did last time is I ripped it and re-uploaded it. We're also still looking at a way to get this into Channel 9, but priorities, right?
Yep.
Cool. Bye, everybody.
Dramatic
zoom out.
Dramatic zoom in.
Oh, God.
No. Delete.
Oh, no. I've got bad news.
Low batteries.
Can't zoom.
So I have a backup.
Dun, 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 dun. Dramatic zoom out.